Privately owned senior high schools in the Volta region are having a hard time filling their classrooms following the implementation of government's free SHS program. Dreading the impact of the policy on their operations, the Association of the Conference of Heads of Private Secondary Cycle Schools or Second Cycle Schools unsuccessfully tried to get government to place some of the beneficiaries in their schools. The move, the private schools say, has left them with empty Form 1 classrooms and are appealing to government to rethink the policy so they don't completely lose out. Fred Kwame Asari has this report.
Form 1 classrooms at Sunrise Senior High School, one of the leading private schools in the Volta region, were empty when JoyNews visited. Though the school has up to standard facilities and saw more than 2/3 of the WASI candidates obtaining distinctions since its establishment in 2005, parents and guardians appear to have completely snubbed Sunrise in favor of schools where their wards can benefit from free SHS. Management of the school said this had led to a drastic reduction in enrollment, with implications for them going into the future unless government heeds to their calls for some sort of intervention.
We want government to rope private high schools onto the free SHS policy in this way. They don't have to send students to us. No. They don't need to give the schools money, either through the National Scholarship Board or through a voucher system or some system that can be designed.
Wallace Senior High School, also in Ho and equipped with the requisite infrastructure for quality education, had a similar story. 6 students had reported, told the school admitted about 100 students same period last year. Here again, some classrooms were locked during our visit. Rodalyn Marty, a first-year student, told JoyNews her parents opted for Sunrise for her even though she secured admission into a public school where she wouldn't have had to pay fees.
My mom said because of the free education, maybe they will not teach us well to understand.
The administrator of Wallace Senior High School, Ephraim Wallace, says private schools at this rate would have to lay off workers.
In the event where the numbers we anticipated, we are not able to get it, probably that may happen.
What may happen?
The entrenchment of staff are likely to happen.
A retired educationist, Armstrong Poho, is of the view that a private second cycle school with good facilities is better placed to give his child quality education compared to a public second cycle school under the free SHS policy.
The free education, those of us who are actually experienced, we saw that even though it's free, but it's not free. There are a lot of implications in it. That's the reason why some of us choose to bring our wards or children to private school.
The national chapter of the Conference of Heads of Private Sector Schools, meanwhile, says it will continue to trumpet its demand for private second cycle schools to be covered by the free SHS policy, though government through the Ministry of Education had rejected their demands.
In other news, acquiring prosthetic limbs after amputation could be very expensive, especially for the physically challenged poor. The cost could also run into thousands of Ghana cedis since they are mostly imported. There is some respite, though, from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, where scientists use local materials to make these prosthetics. Love FM's Kwesi Debra now reports.
Isaku Safiano, now jobless, was a professional driver. In 2003, an accident left him with a damaged left leg, which necessitated amputation. An option to get back to normal life was an artificial limb.
We've heard of orthopedic training center that is at in Sawam. So we approached them for the artificial leg by then in 2005, and then the cost was too high.
Amputation refers to the removal of a body part. Causes can range from trauma, infection to non-communicable diseases like diabetes. Dr. Vincent Atevo is head of orthopedic and trauma unit at the Konfanochi Teaching Hospital.
In developed countries, for instance, amputation accounts for about between 1 to 5% of all trauma cases. And I think the case is not that different from low and middle income countries. It could even be higher.
Amputation, however, has many socio-economic implications. Affected persons become a burden on the family and society. Patients, therefore, would have to be rehabilitated and retrained for other jobs commensurate with their condition. They become a permanent client for the orthopedic surgeon, clinical psychologist, and finally, orthotics.
This prosthesis comes in different forms and different variety. Okay, the price of this prosthesis ranges from $5,000 to about $50,000. However, there are prostheses that are manufactured that are useful for low and middle income countries, with prices are probably lower than the $5,000. But these prostheses are manufactured in such a way that their lifespan is between 4 to 5 years.
Faisal Wahib Adam of the Mechanical Engineering Department of KNUST and his team have been working on lower limb prosthetics. They have been at it for 4 years, using local materials.
So the aim of this work is to use local materials to reduce the cost of prosthesis, lower limb prosthesis, reduce the number of amputees begging on our streets, and then to create jobs.
It started with the shank.
We use bamboo,
followed by the socket.
We use our bags that we call Ghana must go, and then try some material waste with some chemicals to obtain the socket.
And finally, the foot.
So we use sawdust and other local materials.
Initial trials on a patient have proved successful.
So far, the prosthesis has been tested on a patient at the Nsawam Orthopedic Center, and the result has been good.
The team is carrying out further tests to improve on the innovation. Reporting for JoyNews, Kwesi Deborah.
She went into labor and gave birth like any other woman, but after the birth of her third child, Mary Nyako's husband, Emmanuel Kingsford Hagan, stands to lose both her wife and a 9-month-old baby. The wife of a 35-year-old woman has since developed a brain tumor and is unable to recognize her own child, while fluids have since built up in the head of the baby, a medical condition known as hydrocephalus. Richard Kojo now tells the story of a mother and a baby that are likely to die if they don't receive the needed support soon.
The predicament of Mary Nyako started after she gave birth to her third child. The child was diagnosed of hydrocephalus, a health condition that occurs when fluid builds up in the skull and causes the brain to swell.
She gave birth to our last baby on December 19th last year. Then from that on, she was behaving somehow abnormally, but we thought it was after birth. So about 5 months ago, it became serious. She fell sick, and then because of that, she couldn't take care of the baby. So we first took the baby to hospital, and then we saw that the baby was seriously sick. So after treating the baby at the Cape Coast Regional Hospital, they directed us to intubate because it means the head was swollen, and they thought that there was water inside. So they told us to go and then take a scan.
Mary's husband, Emmanuel Kingsford Hagen, a poor farmer who takes very active part in the activities of the Catholic Church here at Emisano, has been supported heavily by the church. The church has made countless contributions to the family in their bid to save the child.
They need to refer the baby to Kolebu, and before then they need to do some scans, head CT scans. So, and the monies involved were huge. So when I got wind of it, I called the man. In fact, the man told me that when they do referral, he doesn't think he will follow up. He was nearly giving up. So I said no. And I knew the reason why he was giving up is because of financial situation. Because by then, he had spent so much.
Reverend Father
Conflict destroys all of us, and they are too expensive for our country. Those are the words of the chairman of the National Peace Council, the Reverend Professor Emmanuel Asante. He observes strife is retarding infrastructural development in parts of the country because government spends so much to maintain peace in those areas. Reverend Professor Asante wants Ghanaians to, as a result, unite for the collective development of the country. Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin has more in this report.
Indeed, a country's progress depends largely on her citizens. The Global Peace Index report of 2015 puts economic impact of violence to world economy at $13.6 trillion of purchasing power parity. This is equivalent to $5 per day for every person on the planet, or 11 times the size of global foreign direct investment. There is no available statistics on how much Ghana spends on conflict resolution and maintenance of peace. However, incidence of violence clearly is at a disturbing levels. Reverend Professor Asante says Ghana should be worried about increasing cost of conflict in the country.
We should be worried about, causes of violence, strife in the country. One, because it retards the country's quantitative and qualitative development. Conflict destroys us. It's too expensive. If you know how much the government spends in trying to maintain law and order, in strive, areas where the people are striving, and then you go there and you look at the infrastructure, educational infrastructure, you want to ask yourself, why would people want to engage in situations like this for the government to spend money in bringing soldiers and police, the same money that could be used to develop your educational institutions, health institutions, and all that?
He believes Ghanaians allow their desires to override the good of the nation. Reverend Professor Asante cited the Nkonya, Alavanyo, and other places where prolonged dispute have retarded development.
In the last couple of weeks, about 10 people have lost their lives in the Kintampo municipal as a result of the friendly herdsmen and all farmers' disturbance.
Reverend Father William Chere is Bono Ahafo Regional Chairman of the National Peace Council. He says recent development in the region are a far cry for years of peace.
Let's turn our attention to some mainstream politics. And the second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Albon Gbagbin, has broken his silence on the procurement of the defective ambulance saga. He says he never did anything wrong in the signing of the contract for the procurement of the ambulances and that his hands were clean. The Minister of Health, Kweku Agyeman-Manu, last week led journalists to the naval base where some 30 ambulances had been abandoned. The 30 vehicles were the first of 200 ambulances procured by the government of Ghana through Big C Trading LCC in a contract signed on 9th or the 19th of December 2012. According to the health minister, though it has been established that some 30 ambulances supplied by Big C Limited were not fit for purpose, an amount of some 2.4 million euros had been disbursed from the consolidated fund to pay for the ambulances. Interacting with journalists in Wa, Abangbagben, who was the health minister when the ambulances were procured, said it is a calculated attempt to smear dirt at him or dim his future political ambition.
Second Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sommana Kinsport Babin, said he has never hidden his intention, which he described as clear as daylight, of aspiring to be president of Ghana. He told journalists in Wa that he started nursing the dream right from his Tom Brown school days at Ward Secondary School in the early 70s. He is of the view that he is best placed to lead the opposition National Democratic Congress (NDC) than any of the people also intending to put themselves forward for the party's flag bearer in the 2020 election.
Together with the NDC, we will take the decision as to who will lead us in 2020. But I stand tall among those who have come out so far. And there's none of them, those who have come out so far, who doesn't admire my leadership, because I've led all of them in politics. All of them, those who have come out now. And the current president, my good friend Nana, is aware that from 1997 to 2000, the committee he actually showed his mettle was the Committee on Constitutional, Legal, and Parliamentary Affairs. And I was the chair, and he was my ranking. And so if my ranking is president today, who can say the chairman is not qualified to be president?
The Nadolo Keleo Member of Parliament, who celebrated his 60th birthday and 25 years as a member of Ghana's legislature yesterday, said his intention was to be in politics for only 8 years. That plan was, however, scuttled. He was persuaded severally by former President John Evans Atta Mills, another big source in government, and the then opposition MPP.
Hundreds of sports lovers in the Ashanti region were once again attracted to participate in one of the biggest church events ever. The second edition of the Inshira Church Olympics saw churches battle each other to clinch the ultimate trophy. Kwesi Debra brings highlights to us.
Soccer, as usual, provided the biggest attraction and excitement. Calvary Liberty, Heaven City, Good Shepherd and Rose of Sharon set the stage for a tough contest, having made it to the semi-finals. In the end, Good Shepherd prevailed over Liberty after both teams triumphed over their opponents to reach the finals. For their prize, the winners receive a trophy and Multi TV decoder. Yes. 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 Winners in other competitions took home decoders, mobile phones and other prizes. Overall champions, Rose of Sharon grabbed a NASCO flat screen television set and a trophy.
We thank God for how far He has brought us. Beginning, we had high hopes, and by His grace, we were able to win this ultimate trophy at the football competition. So we thank God. We thank all our players, our church members, their support, and their kind wishes. We thank everybody for making us this program a success.
Fifi Okran is Programs Manager in Shura FM.
This event has been very successful, and there were lots of entertainment and excitement here. It's the second edition of the Inshira FM Church Olympics. It's been very amazing, and we're looking forward that next year it will be more bigger than what we experienced this year.
Sports, Kwesi Debra.
Wow, amazing highlights there by Kwesi Debra, the Inshira FM Church Olympics. But we have to look at the newspapers. We'll look at a lot more of the stories on the various front pages.